So welcome all of you and have a good morning. So before we start, we are going to discuss about Python in today's session as well as in the few sessions to come next. I am Amit Ranjan and I have been working as a big data consultant and developer mostly. So I have been working in Python, Java and Scala along with frameworks of big data for last more than 5 years. So please open the Anaconda. If you open Anaconda, yeah, so this you can see this is my Anaconda Cloud Navigator and lots of things. You will see Jupyter Notebook. This is what we will be using. So can you open the Jupyter Notebook? I will show you. If I open the Jupyter Notebook, this is the command line it will come, and I will simply press enter. It will take some time to launch, and once it gets started, it will give you a web browser where you can write your Python scripts, you can run them. You see this is my Jupyter, the web browser. By default it opens at the local host 8888, and this is basically my file browser. You will have your own file browser. This is my file browser. Yesterday we took some idea about the Python interactive shell, the Python command line, where we downloaded and installed Python, and then we worked some commands over there. So this is your file browser. What you can do is we will create a notebook. A notebook is basically a collection of your code snippets which you run, which you execute. So here you will see new. Once you go to new, there will be an option for Python 3. So you can create a Python 3 notebook. If you click here, you will get another screen, a screen like this. This is my Python notebook. It is blank. We will try to code out. Now, here you can type any Python command which you want, like say x is equal to 10, and then you want to print the value of x. So you can say something like x is equal to say %d and then %x like this. Once you have written the commands over here, you can write a longer code snippet or a smaller code snippet like this. Just press shift plus enter and it will execute. So see, this has executed. The result is getting displayed here, and you get one more cell. Basically, these are the cells. Inside the cells, you can do anything. So just try to run any sample code. For example, you may run like this, like print, and then you can type your message as simple as hello world. And once you are done, everyone see my screen, you can go to cell and you can go to run cells. So the cells will be executed. Make sure that your cursor is by the end of the command which you want to execute. Here is also one option, run cell and select below. So if you click on this particular button, your cell will be executed, the content, and a new cell will come in the bottom. So it goes like this. So this becomes quite easy to work with the Python notebook and Jupyter. You can see the execution of every cell, and it also helps in debugging of the code. If you want to write some comment, you can go and instead of code, you can make it as markdown. So if you make it as markdown, this section will be considered as comment, like this is comment. And now if you try to execute cells, it will be executed and you will get the result on the screen here itself. So this is about it. And then you can also save the notebook, save and checkpoint if you want to save the notebook at some location on your machine. So this is some introduction to the Jupyter notebook. We will use it, and once we come back here. Now let's have a quick review of what we discussed yesterday. Yesterday we talked about what is Python. Like we talked about what is Python, We talked about why should we use Python for data science. We talked about the data types in Python, the simple types, and we also talked about the complex types. We talked about strings, we talked about a list, we talked about sets, tuples, integers, and then we talked about the input method, which helps the user to type any input, provide any input to the code. And we also talked about the loops, basically the while loop, and we talked about the for loop. And what next? We talked about conditions. And in the condition, we talked about if else. And we also got some idea about else, if else, elif, and then else, and so on. So it goes like this. So we had some beginning idea on the Python. Today I'm going to ask a few questions. If you are having some idea of any other programming language, that is certainly going to help. So I am going to ask a few questions from you. First of all, I want to display even numbers from 1 to 100. How is this possible? How can you do that using a code? So we will talk about this problem. We will see there are numerous possibilities of doing so. So let's start. Okay, so one option can be we can start from I is equal to 1, and then we can give a loop like while I is less than equal to 100. And then here you can create a block like if I modulus 2 is equal to 0, then we will print I. And then finally, we are going to increment I by 1. So this is one possibility. Do you agree? This is fine. This will print all the even numbers from 1 to 100. Okay, so one more way to do the same will be in less lines of code for I in a range 1 to 101, because 101 will be not included, and then you can write your logic if I is I modulus 2 is equal to 0, you are going to print I. So this will obviously take less lines of code, and this is also going to work. Are there other ways? Yes, definitely there are some other ways as well to do this. One interesting way to note here is you can simply give for I in range start from 2, end at 101 in a step of 2, and then print I. This will be even less lines of code. What happens here is you start from 2 because you know that 2 is the first odd number. So you start from 2 and you end at 100 because 101 is not included. But you go in a step of 2. So 2 plus 2 will be 4. Then plus 2 will be 6. And then plus 2 will be 8, and so on till 100. 101 is not included. So this will be even having even less lines of code having the same meaning. Are there other ways to do that? You can also try this on your Jupyter Notebook. If you are using Jupyter Notebook or you are using a Python command line, you can play with them. Like I will discuss with the notebook. If I go here and I will show like for I in range 2 to, let me give you example from 2 to 20. Okay, just to make it short. You can give 100 as well, not a problem. And I am going to print I. So if I run this, Okay, so I've restarted my Jupyter and you can see it is working the same way. Now, I would like to give you two more examples for the same, and that will help us discuss help us know two more concepts. One concept is called as list comprehension. That is, if you have a list, then you can manipulate the list in a very extremely easy manner. But before that, let's discuss one other important point. One is using lambda functions, and one is using list comprehension. Well, what happens in lambda function is you can have a function to be passed as an argument to another function. For example, suppose you have a list called as x, and x contains a list of elements like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you want to square every element. That is, you want to have a result which is a list, and you want to square like for 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. So basically, this is the list which is created by squaring every element of the original list x. Again, there are many ways to do that. One way can be for I in x, for every element in the x. We can, but okay, first of all, we can create a result as empty list. And for every element in the x, like 1, 2, 3, and so on, we can do like result dot we will append. That is, we will add. What will we add? We will add I into I. That is the I square. So in this portion of code, your final result list will have the square of every element in the parent list. And this is something we can easily check. Suppose we create a list of some numbers, and then we will have a result as empty list in the beginning. And for I in x, we can have a result dot append I into I. And finally, so if you run this, it's going to run. And now if you type result, you will see result is a list of a square of all the numbers. So this is a very simple code. Now we are going to increase one more way to handle this. One other way can be for all the elements in the X, we can have like for every element in X, for I in X. You can write this in a single line, and this is going to be your result. This is also fine. What will happen is for every element in the X, it is going to return I into I. So we will try to see that as well. Like let's use result underscore 2 is equal to I into I for I in X. So if you run this, it's going to run fine. And finally, if you type result 2, you will get, the name is result underscore 2. So you will see the same result. This particular design is extremely shorthand representation, and this is what is called as list comprehension. So in list comprehension, the things go like this. For whatever element in your list, you can, in the beginning, you will have what you want to return. So here, what we have seen is for every element in the X, you can either go this way or you can go in a single line like this. Another important way is about the lambda function, which we are going to discuss now. A function is defined using DEF. So whenever you see def or definition, it means a function is going to start. And suppose I'm going to create a function called as a square that will take some input k. Then colon, it means the definition of the function has started. And what you are going to return, we are going to return k into k. One more thing is I would like to tell you, you may also write something like k into 2. So this is equivalent to k to the exponent 2, k square. Similarly, k into 3, this is the cube of k, the exponent of 3. So there are two ways of writing the same. I mean, this is equivalent to k into k, and this is equivalent to k into k into k, and so on. So these are the different, this is not the syntax, this is the exact meaning. Like this is your k square, this is your k cube. This is how you write in Python. So in Python, you can either use this particular notation or this particular notation to perform the square. So what we have done is we have very simply created a function. This function will take one argument at a time. Obviously, the argument will be some numeric type. You do not specify the type, but you should understand like it can be of integer type, a long type, a double type, a float type. Basically, the numeric types will be allowed because you are going to perform the square. You should not pass a string, else you will get runtime exception. So this is a function we have created. Now, what is it? We want to apply this function on every element of the result. So you can do this in multiple ways, whatever suits you. The one way can be like you want result is equal to empty list, and then for every element in your X, you would like to have a result dot append a square of I. This is something you can do. Well, this is very much similar to the first thing which we have done. The other way to do that is you can simply say result is equal to map. Then you specify the function. What is the function? A square of what? X. Now try to understand this particular logic. Map is basically a built-in function. That is, it is available in the Python. Map will accept two arguments. The first argument will be your function, and the second argument of the map will be your sequence. Sequence is like your list or your tuple, something like that. So what map will do is map will run this particular function on every element of the sequence. This is the logic. So the first argument runs on every element of the sequence or every element of X in our case. So you can see this map is a function which is accepting a function as an argument, and whatever function you give, you can apply on every element of the sequence. Not only this, you see here we created a square as a function. You need not to create a function earlier. You can do something like this. Result is equal to map, and you can create a function at the same time, lambda X. For every input, you are going to return X into X. This is your function. Okay, just a moment. X can be confusing here. So let's use another name. For every input k, you are going to produce k into k as output on the x. So this single line is also having the same, will be having the same result as of the other lines of code. This is called as lambda function. Basically, this is your function. And you can understand in this particular function, this is your input to the function, and this is your output of the function. In the output, you cannot use print command in lambda functions, but this function, what is the name of the function? No name. So the main point is this particular function does not have any name. So it is also called as anonymous function. This is very similar to this particular design, but in this design, the function had a name called as square. The logic is the same, but in this example, the function does not have any name. So if you're not going to use any function most of the time, you can create lambda functions. So I'm going to show you these things. We can write first of all, let's create a function def square. It will take some input k, and it is going to return k to the power 2. Okay, so this is there, and you can check this, like if you call a square of 10, and then if you run this, you will get the output at 100. So we have created a function here. Now we have x as our input list. So what we can do is we can type result is equal to map, pass the function, and this function will be applied over all the elements of the x. And now if you type result, you will see result is basically a map. You can iterate through it for I in result. You can type like print I, and oh, sorry, this is Python 2 syntax. So in Python 3, we use like this, print I, and you will get the same result. So basically you can iterate through the result, and this result is having the same effect. Not only this, let me call like result underscore 4, and I will say like it is map lambda of x will give us x square over x. This x can be confusing, so let's use k. Okay. And now if you type for I in result underscore 4, I want to print I, so it will have the same result. So the point is you should be able to understand what is a lambda function. Now with the help of lambda function, we have talked about map method. There are two more important methods. One is filter and one is reduce. So let's talk about filter, and then we will talk about reduce. In filter, this is again inbuilt function. You pass a function in the first parameter, and the second parameter is in your sequence. So here what happens is this function should return either true or it should return false. And this is the sequence over which you are going to run your function. Now, the elements for which true is returned will be returned by the filter. And the elements of the sequence for which the function has false will not be returned. So suppose you can call filter, then you can give lambda k, and then you will say if k modulus 2 is equal to 0. That's it. This is your input and this is your output. So this output, this will be, sorry, you need not to give if, only this condition. So this output will be either true for the even numbers, and this output, this result will be false for the odd numbers. So this is the condition, or this is the evaluation, and you want to run this over some other sequence. For example, you want to run this over a range of 1 to 101. So this will give you all the even numbers. So let's try to see this. What we can do is we can have, say, even numbers is equal to filter. What is our condition? For lambda k, we will check k modulus 2 is equal to 0 or not. And then we would like to give range of 100 to 101. So now you can type for I in even numbers, print I. So you will see, you will get all the even numbers from 1 to 100. So this is also one of the ways to do that. We have seen some of the interesting ways. Now the next point is, so map is there, filter is there, both can accept your lambda functions. One other important way in use of lambda function in Python is in the reduce. Reduce is quite interesting function. It will take a function as an argument, and then it will take a sequence. Whatever function it takes as an argument, this function must take 2 arguments, and it should return 1 result. And this function will be applied over all the elements of the sequence. Let me tell you one example. Suppose you have a list called as 10, 12, 16, 18, 14, like this. This is your list. You want to add all the numbers of the list. What you can do is you can take these 2 elements. Suppose this is X and this is Y. Just add them together. The result will be 22. Now what you can do is you can make this element as X and you can make this element as Y. And then you can add these 2 elements together and the result will be 38. In the next step, you can make this element as X and you can make this element as Y. And then you can add these 2. So you will get some result, I think 56. Now, what you can do is going ahead, you can consider this as X and you can consider this as Y. And then you can add them together and the result will be 70. So this is the way where you can add all the numbers of the list. The code for this will be very, very same. You can call reduce. You can call a function, say lambda x comma y. The result will be x plus y over some list. Suppose you have got some list over this. So this will give you a single value which will add all the numbers of the list. So if we try to do this, suppose we create my underscore list, which is equal to a list of some numbers. Okay, I think this is fine. And then what we will do is we will say sum of list is equal to reduce lambda xy. The result will be x plus y over all the elements of my list. Reduce is not defined. Oh, reduce is an inbuilt function. It should be there. Okay, let me check whether reduce is there in Python 3. Reduce should be there. Reduce is not defined. Okay. Okay, so it's modified functools.reduce. So the name has been modified in Python 3. Okay. Okay, so there is a module called as functools. I will talk about this in some time, but we can print the sum of all the list. So this is one way to do that. So basically the idea was you should be able to understand what is a lambda function. You will see lambda functions quite often as you go ahead, and this is very interesting concept in Python. The other thing is about list comprehension. So the first thing is, I mean, this was just to show you the advantage is you can have a sum function is already there. So if you want to reduce the lines of code, you can simply call sum of my list and that will have the same result. Not only sum of my list, you can call max function also, and you can get what is the maximum element in your list. So the maximum element is 43, and you can check from here as well. Apart from this, if you have to write the reduce method, like how you can calculate the maximum element in a list using the reduce, like we are having these elements, how we can call reduce to get the maximum. So what we can do is we can take the two elements at a time, compute whatever is the maximum. Then over this result, take the next element and compute whatever is the maximum. Over this output, take the next element and compute whatever is the maximum. Over this output, take the next element and compute whatever is the maximum. So finally, you will be having the maximum among the list. So in order to write this particular code, you can call reduce. Then you will take two arguments, lambda x and y, and then you will see, like, if x is greater than y, then you will return x, else you will return y. So this is one more syntax. Like if else can be written like this. You can call like if x is greater than y, then return x, else return y. This is also acceptable. And in Java and some programming languages, you have got something like this. X greater than y, just compute. If it is yes, then this, else this. This is again the similar in Java. In Python, this same code is written like this. If x is greater than y, then you will return x, else you will return y. So this is what the function is doing, and you will try to run this over my list, and then you will get the max number. So you can quickly check this out as well. Like suppose you want to take what is the max value, you can try. So if we try to do this, and then if we try to print the max val, it will have the same result. So there are some inbuilt functions also to do that, but there are certain situations where your lambda functions can be helpful. So let's talk about one such situation. Suppose you are having a list of numbers, and among the list of numbers, you would like to calculate the product. You would like to see what is the product of all the numbers. So let's try to see this. You can type product is equal to so if we try to do this and then you finally want to print the product of all the numbers. So this is the product of all the numbers in your list. So we started with a very basic example, like display all the even numbers from 1 to 100. And we talked like there are multiple ways to do that. And one other way apart from these was to use filter as well using lambda functions. So using lambda functions, we discussed like we want all the even numbers. So we can call filter. And from filter, you can call lambda for every x. You would like to see x modulus 2 is equal to 0 and over your list. Suppose your list is my list, or not only my list. Basically, if you want elements from 1 to 100, you can use range. So you can say range from 1 to 101. So this is also one of the ways. So whichever way you like, and then you can loop through the even iterator, and then you can print it. And this is there. So there are many ways to do this, the same problem, but now I'm going to add one more point to display the even numbers from 1 to 100. You know how to print the even numbers or odd numbers or whatever you think. Now the point is basically we want to accept these two numbers from users. Like we have fixed it, the first number and the last number. Suppose this is your lower number and this is your higher number, L and H, or you can give this is your lower number and this is your higher number. Now you want to accept the lower number and higher number from user, and you want to print all the even numbers between these two. So you want to make it little more dynamic, little more interactive. So yesterday we talked about the input method. So what we will do is here itself, we will give the lower number will be equal to input. We will give the message like enter lower number. And once we take that, we will see like input, enter the higher number. And then depending upon your favorite way to do that. The only difference is it will be considered as a string, so you have to translate it to integer because it will be by default in the string format. So what we can do is the way you want, suppose you want, you may take advantage. Range will not be kind of best suited here because the lower number can be an odd number or can be the even number. So this particular solution, what we discussed here, this should not be used in this case because you don't know how many to skip. You may start with an odd or you may start with even. You can use this particular solution, something like this, or you can use this particular solution, or you can use a lambda function, whichever you feels fine to you. Let us use lambda function. So what we'll do is we will say even list is equal to, we will run filter and then lambda of x and y. We are going, sorry, for lambda x, we will see x modulus 2 is equal to 0. and then where you will run over the range of from the lower number. So just see, I'm converting it to integer, and till the higher number, you will add 1 to the higher number. I know why. I hope you know why, because the higher number should be included. So if you try to run this, you will see enter lower number. Suppose I'm entering 10. Enter the higher number. Suppose I want to enter it to be 50. And I will get even list. So I will just print for I in even list. I will simply print I. So sorry, I'm quite habituated to use Python 2. So in Python 2, what happens is you parentheses are not mandatory. So most of the time I go by that flow. So this is your all the even numbers from 10 to 50. So this in this way you can add some more dynamicism to your program. Now we'll talk about list and strings. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a situation, and these situations are quite common, but let's discuss this first. I have, see, Python is very much popular when it comes to parsing of files. And in many projects, you will see that you will be having a file, some kind of file at some location. And this file will be having some records. So let's talk about this contains the ID, then it contains comma, then it contains the name of the customer, then it contains comma, and then it contains some shopping details of the customer, like the product, like which product has been bought by the customer, something like this. So ID can be 1, customer can be A, and product can be P1. Customer has bought P1. The same customer may buy different products, or the same customer may buy the same products again and again. This is also fine, isn't it? This is quite possible. And there can be a different customer to B, he's purchasing P1, then again one more same customer purchasing P2, then some third customer C purchasing P1, and so on. So there can be details, something like this. I mean, lots of other details. So every line is a record. So this every line is a record. The very first thing is to know about is how are you going to read files in Python? Reading files. This is the first thing. So we will talk more about files as we proceed to the next sessions, but today we will take a small look. It's very simple to read files. Basically, whenever you want to read a file, you can call the file method. The first argument will be the name of the file. What is the name of the file which you want to read? And the next method, next parameter will be the mode. There are lots of modes available. We will talk about one is the read mode, where you want to read the file. One is the write mode, where you want to write to the file, and one is the append mode, where you want to append to the file. There are binary modes as well. So in the read mode, you read the file. In the write mode, you create a file. So this will create. This will either create the file, or this may overwrite to the file. So suppose if the file already exists at the location with the same name, so that file will be deleted and a new file will be created. So it will overwrite. And append will either append to the file or it will create the file. If the file does not exist, then the file will be created. If the file exists, then these content will be added to the end of the file. File has got other methods also, but we will talk about that later. So suppose if you create f is equal to certain file, so you give the full location of the file and you create read the file. Once you do that, there are many methods over the file. For example, if you there is one method called as read. Then there is one more method called as read lines. Suppose, so in read and read lines, there is a difference. In read, you will get a single variable which will contain the entire content of the file. Whereas in read lines, you will get a list where every element of the list will be one line of the file. Every line will become one element in the list. So I'm going to show you first about read and read lines before we proceed. So let me quickly create a file of this particular design. So suppose one is A is purchasing product P1. So I'm just adding some sample dummy records. So these are some of the elements: the user ID, user name, and product. So let me save this file at some location. So I'm going to save this file at my desktop, or no, let's go inside documents. Okay. So I am going to save this file called as user details.txt. Okay. Python, this is it. So let me save it here. Okay. So what I will do is I will go inside Python. This is my file. So this is my full location of the file. So my program should look like this. F is equal to file, then the name of the file, which is user details. And I want to go in the read mode. This is the file. So it's not file, it's basically open. So it's slightly different. So now if you type F, so F is basically a file, refers to the file. This is the file and it wants to read the file. So now if you type f.read, you will see entire content of the file is displayed in a single string. Whereas if you try to do f.readline, okay, so basically what happens is, let me open the file again. And now I would like to read line. So if you try to see like x is equal to f.readline, type x. So x is giving you one particular line of the file. Now if you type f.readline again, you will get the next line of the file. So you see, you are able to read the content of the file line by line. So every time you call f.readline, you will get the next line of the file. So finally, once all the lines of the file has been read, you will get a blank. So it goes like this. So see, once all the lines have been read, you will get a blank. So this is how the read line works. You will have to call it read line multiple times in order to work with it. So suppose if you want to create, you want to display the content of the file. So you can say like for x in f.readline, I want to print x. So that's it. So let me try to run this on the Jupyter notebook. Yeah. So if you try to run this here, so, sorry. No, like this. So in this way, you can read the whole file. I will talk about the iterators. They are quite interesting to know, because the first thing you will observe here is I am opening the file. This is the file on my machine. I am opening the file in the read mode and saving it in a variable f. Once I save this in the variable f, I can iterate through that particular file. So what happens is you have got a file and the file has got multiple lines, so on. So you will read one line at a time. This particular line is available by the name f.readLine. And this is quite interesting way to read a large file. Suppose if you are having a large file, it is not good to store all the content of the file in the memory. So you can read through the files one by one. So whatever is the content of the first line, suppose this is my first line, it is accessible using f.readLine, and then you can store this in some variable x. So when it comes to the end of the line, finally, this will be equal to the blank empty string. So that is what the check is there. While I do not get any blank string, I will print that particular x. Once that x has been printed, the next time I call f.readLine, this will read the next line for me. So this is read line is basically your iterator, which is getting loaded in the X. So as you read, the number of times you call the read line, it will keep on iterating towards the next line. So if you call this read line 5 times, it means you have already read 5 lines. If you call it first time, you will read the first line. So this way you are reading through the entire file line by line. So this is the one way where you can, this is also quite convenient, and this is also used many times in Python. How can you read line from, or how can you can read the content of a file? The first thing we are going to talk about is the strings, and there some connection with the list. Like what we just saw, we are having suppose we do read lines. We have seen like this is how you can open a file to read, and then you can either iterate through one by one, or if the file is small, what we can do is we can simply say file content is equal to f.readlines. So it's a better name will be file list. So the content of the file goes in a list, and then we can say like for I in file content list, we want to print I. So as simple as that. So if we try to do this, this is also fine, and you can read the content of the file line by line. But here, what happens is, ultimately, your file content list, it is a list, and these are the elements of the list. Like this is one element of the list, this is the second element of the list, and so on. Suppose we know that the first element is the ID, second element is the name of the employee, name of the customer, and the third field is the product ID, something like that. So we would like to parse it. How you can parse? Parsing is very easy by the use of a split method. Now, split method is there in Java also, in Python also it happens the same way. Like for example, if you have a content like 1, A, P1, you can very well assign the values by this syntax. Suppose this is your X is a list, X is a string. You can do things like this. First of all, you can have a temporary list which is equal to X dot split on the basis of comma. Once you do this, a temp list will have the elements 1, A, and P1. So it simply means your original string was this 1A, P1, but you are splitting on the basis of comma. So this comma part will be decided as a delimiter, and you will ultimately have a list with 3 elements. One element will be 1, other element will be A, and other element will be P1, like this. So this, on the basis of comma, you will be deciding the different fields. So once you create this temp list, finally you can have the ID. What is ID? ID will be temp list, and then you can search for the index 0. Then name. What is the name? Name will be the temp list, and the first index means the second element. And the product, what will be the product? Product will be your temp list and second index, which is third element. So in this way, you can read every content. You can go line by line and understand what is the ID, what is the name, what is the product. Now this is the functionality of a split. So a split will take a string as an argument and it will return a list depending upon your delimiter. And a split is called over a string. So you can understand from this particular logic. This is one sample invocation of the split. This is your input and this is the string which is the delimiter. So I will write here, this is my input string and this is my delimiter string. Now the next thing is a reverse is there. Suppose you have a list and from the list you want to compute a string. You can do that using join. So I'm going to show you. Suppose say I have got a string like my string is equal to 1, A, P1, like this. And I would like to say like TMP list is equal to my string dot split on the basis of comma. And then I would like to print that ID is equal to percentages, name is equal to percentages, and product is equal to percentages. And finally, I will substitute the values like temp list 0, temp list 1, temp list 2. Okay, so if you try to do this, you see ID is equal to 1, name is equal to A, and product is equal to P1. You are able to parse the content. So this is quite easy to do this like this way. And suppose if you have got a list called as my list is equal to, say, ABC, PQR, and say XYZ. If you want to create a single string, you can give my str is equal to, you give the element and the string, and then you give join my list. Now let us try to understand what happens here. Finally, we will print string is equal to %s, and then we will percentage my str. Okay, so here suppose you give here comma, it means all the elements of the list will be separated by comma and it will become a single string. You see, a single string with comma as the separator. If you give hyphen, then all the elements will be joined by hyphen in between. If you give two hyphens, then they will be joined with two hyphens in between. So it's quite self-explanatory to understand, but I will again repeat what is going on. So you have got one element, two element, and three element. These are the elements of a list. So suppose one is there, two is there, and three is there. So if you want to create a string, what is the joining between them? You can join with comma, or you can join with hyphen, or you can join with anything between them. If you don't want anything in between, if you want to join them without any delimiter, so simply give empty string, and that will be fine. So they will be joined like this. You see, ABC, PQR, and XYZ. So list and join in some ways are quite analogous to each other. I mean, they are contrary to each other, basically. They do the reverse things. Now I have got a question which we would like to discuss. My question is, we have to develop a code which will read the file, and finally it will print few things. The first thing it will print is how many unique users are there. You all have seen the file. I will show you once again. This is the user details file. So in this file, if you talk about the unique users, 1 is one of them, 2 is one of them, 3 and 4. So there are 4 different unique users. So I would like to show like 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are my unique users. This is my first question. The second question is, let me go back here. The second question is basically not how many, who are the unique users. Okay. The second is, for every user, I want to know how many products they have bought. How many products have been bought. And the third thing is, for every user, I would like to know which distinct products have been bought. Next, I would like to know that for every product, how many times it has been bought. So these are the 4 things we would like to discuss. Let us see how much we can discuss today. If we cannot discuss all of them today, then so basically let's talk about what exactly we are aiming to discuss. So first of all, we are trying to discuss like how many unique users are there. Like 1 is there, 2 is there, 3 is there, and 4 is there. These are the unique users. The next thing is, see, 1 has bought 3 products, 2 has bought 3 products, 3 has bought a single product, and 4 has bought 3 products. So these are the different products which have been bought by the different users. The The third question is, see, one has bought P1 and P2. So these are the distinct products bought by one. See, P1 has been bought twice and P2 has been bought once for one. But the distinct products are P1 and P2. The quantities can be, their quantities are one or more than one. Similarly, for 2, the distinct products are P1, P2, P3. 2 has bought all 3 different products. 3 has bought only P2. And 4 has bought only P1 and P3. The difference is P1 has been bought twice and P3 has been bought once. But we have to discover the distinct products. And the final question is, for every product, how many quantities have been sold? So you can see, like for P1, the quantities are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 quantities have been sold. Similarly, for P2, you will observe 1, 2, 3 quantities have been sold. And for P3, 1, 2 quantities have been sold. So you have to understand like how many quantities have been sold for every product. So these are the things you have to evaluate in the 4 questions. I hope the questions are clear. So let's start our discussion how we are going to do this. So you have to read the file and you have to print all these things. So basically, what is the strategy you are going to use? This is about parsing. This is about reading the file. Assume that the file is a small for our use case, but in practical situation, the file may not be that small. So using read lines method, you have to be quite careful while using that. So let us discuss that. The first solution. Suppose we are having a file and we know what is the content of the file. It goes like there is ID, there is a name, and then there is product. So we will read the line, we will extract the ID, and we will have a list. Suppose the ID is 1, we will add it here. Then again we will read the line, we will extract the ID, and suppose the ID is 1. So we will check whether it is there in the list or not. If it is not, we will add. If it is there, we will not add. Then we will again read the line, we will extract the ID. Suppose ID is 2. So we will check whether 2 is there or not. So if 2 is not there, we will add it. So in this way, it will happen. Is this what you are saying, Padam? Yeah, so that's true. It is going to work. It is perfectly fine. But the only problem is, suppose you have 100 lines. There can be more than 100 lines. There can be thousands or millions of lines. So for every line, you are scanning the whole list. And then you, after the scanning of the list, you detect whether it is the ID is there or not. So that will take time. So what we can do is, instead of using a list, we can maintain something called as set. Set is a collection of unique items, and it is very, very fast as compared to list. So suppose I will give you one example about set. Suppose if you create a set like this, my underscore set is equal to set. Okay. Now if you say my underscore set dot add 1, and similarly you keep on adding multiple elements, like you add 1, you add 2, you add 2, and so on. Now if you want to print my set, let's see what happens. You see only 1 and 2 are getting printed. So you added 1 and 2 multiple times, but internally the set will contain the unique items. So basically we need not do a scan. That will be done internally by Python. So set contains the unique items. So what we can do is, we can simply scan the file, just get the ID, and whatever is the ID, add to set. we need not to scan whether it exists in the list or not. Okay, does this sound better? So we need not to scan the list multiple times. The code will be reduced and it will be a little faster as well in execution. So let's try to write the code for the same. I would suggest to use a read line. If it cannot be done, then read lines is there. So this is the portion of the code from where you can read the file. And while reading every file, what we will do is you can obviously create temp list is equal to s dot split on the basis of comma. And then you can see what is the ID. ID will be temp list first index, sorry, 0th index. And in the beginning, we can have something like unique users is equal to a set. And we will simply add like unique users dot add ID. Okay, that's it. And once it is done, so let us try to write this code first. So let's write it here, execute it, and finally if you try to print like unique users is equal to %s. Unique users is a set, but I would like to treat as a string representation. And sorry, if we try to run this, it's not getting printed. Let's try to see this. No, it's not running. Oh, sorry. Like looks like my Jupyter has hanged. So let me restart my Jupyter. It sometimes doesn't behave the way we want. So let me copy this code somewhere. So I'm going to close this. Let me start a new Python 3. Okay. So now if I try to print the unique users, yeah, you see these are the unique users 1, 3, 2, and 4. The order doesn't matter, but the sequence goes like this. So I can make it a little more formatted like this. So these are the unique users. So I hope this is about you got to understand about the first question. So it is a good practice for you to try to discover these 3 questions as well. You can keep a note of them somewhere and try to practice on them. So I hope you all got some information about Python today, and thank you all for joining. Do give your reviews and your ratings to help us serve you better. Thank you.